you know, we're never athletes. You know, a lot of us are athletes. You know, I just found out last week, someone's telling me that someone was trying to get me into the Sports Hall of Fame here, which was his own doing. It just annoyed me to have him come back and say, no, I was not an athlete. Like, I know wrestling's not a sport. And, you know, fair enough, but you know, I accomplished a lot, and where do I get my credit? I'm not going to get. I'm not going to get. I'm not going to get an acting award, or actor is not going to pull me up and say for all those years of wrestling, here's your, you know. And if the sports world isn't going to turn their back on you too and say you are nothing to us, you know, I think that's why wrestlers for years have always been very defensive about what they do, because we don't ever get that kind of respect.
The WWE Hall of Fame isn't the same, kind of.
Well, you know, it's nice, but you get that's nice, yeah. I would never put that down or anything. It's deserved. Like my father going in this year, it's important that I think 100 years from now, if you're going to look back on what the pioneers of pro wrestling and who took it to where it ends up years from now, you're going to have to tip your hat to my father, and him not being in there, and someone like people in my family who are not the case, but I mean, if they were opposed to it, all you do, like even me going back to WWE, me not going back, I just fade off into obscurity, and that's the end of that's all you ever hear about Bret Hart. That he was this bitter, you know, like I said before. But I think you have a right to be remembered, and especially if you contributed. And I know my dad did. I know I did. I know my brother Owen did, and I'm sure that's something that should happen someday, somewhere down the road.
Oh, for sure. What would your dad say about your return?
I think he'd be kind of happy about it.
Yeah, that you've mended the bridges.
I think my dad and my mom would have been, and to know that I'm sort of in my own way trying to maybe help bring the family together and do something for my niece and nephew, and doing like that, and that is sort of an objective of mine. Doing that and just getting back with wrestling and being on good terms with it is a good feeling for me.
Awesome. I have a list of a couple of names here. If you could just give me some thoughts, that kind of thing on everyone. We'll start with Owen.
Well, I think about him every day. Owen, I mostly find that you know me, you'll laugh because whenever anything goes wrong, like the lights won't work or you know, something happens, or I lock my keys in the car or whatever, or I can't find something, any kind of problem I get where it seems like someone's doing this on purpose, it's like I'm always looking up and going, I know this is Owen. And
One last laugh.
And Owen's constantly pulling jokes on me. Either that or it's my imagination, but in either way, I think about him all the time. Because it's pretty regular.
That's right.
My kids all know, it's like, it's Owen. Just don't even worry about it, it's Owen. The remote suddenly doesn't work. It's like, I know it's Owen, you know.
That's good, though, that you have that memory. It's nice that it comes up every once in a while.
I mean, I think of Owen, and I think it's the same for just about everybody I know. You think of him and you smile, because it makes you think of some kind of joke or something that he did or something funny, or it's usually a happy thought.
That storyline with you and him fighting, that must have been one of the better times in your life.
It did. It was a great time for me, and what I loved about it was how much it meant to Owen, and it really did mean the world to him. And he had we had a very special relationship after that. I mean, we always had a special relationship before that, but the fact that I worked with him and we did it the way we did it and had the matches that we had, I think he was really proud of himself and really proud of me. And I think if I ever stepped into those shoes of being his big brother, it was when we did all that kind of stuff. And I think he really he loved those times. And when I look back on it, it's all good memories for me. I do kind of get a little annoyed when a lot of people think that we hated each other, you know, and that was all part of a storyline. And
then it worked.
Yeah, and it worked. But I mean, I throughout that whole period, it was never anything about it was the love between two brothers and whatever.
Next one, Eric Bischoff.
Eric Bischoff.
How come they didn't know how to use you properly?
Eric Bischoff, plain and simply, was a guy that never understood wrestling, never knew a good idea from a bad idea, and was the worst possible guy to put in a position of power.
And he's back.
He was a nice enough guy with me, and he was always nice enough, but nice isn't about, that's not the question. If you ask me if he's a nice guy, sure, he's a nice guy, but as far as brilliant or a good wrestling mind, forget it. I could find some guys out on the street here that know more about wrestling than Eric Bischoff ever.
Oh, we're in Calgary. It's a wrestling town.
Yeah, but
No,
he was bad.
Steve Austin.
Steve Austin was one of my most favorite guys to work with. We had great chemistry. I mean, no matter what day we wrestled or how tired we were or wherever we were, we always had a great match. He was really passionate. That's one thing I always remember about Steve is that he was he always wanted to have a phenomenal match every night. And he took that attitude into the ring every night. He always worked hard. He was just a perfect guy to work with, great guy to work with, great verbally, and he had so many other skills like his look and his talk and all that. But I kind of caught him just at the right time. When I think of the Hitman and Steve Austin, that's when those matches in that time was probably the best matches maybe in the history of the wrestling. It's a shame that we didn't get to wrestle even more because we're just right at the top of it. We had lots of room left for a rivalry that would have lasted for years.
Maybe on the opposite end of that spectrum, Shawn Michaels.
Shawn, I thought that when I went back, and even sort of swallowing my pride and going back, that I would be, sorry that I did it. And, see him sort of walking past me with his nose up kind of in the dressing room. Would have bothered me that he didn't acknowledge the big step I took and sort of coming back and doing all this. And I thought I would come forward and take the step forward, but that he wouldn't necessarily take the step forward either. That it was just going to be sort of a pretend truce or whatever. But that's not how it was. I took that step, and I noticed after that it was really a huge relief for him. And it was like a forgiveness, I guess, that he really needed, I think, to set him free. I think he was troubled by it for years. And I realized after we sort of had our little in-ring moment there, that it was all quite real. I never saw Shawn until I got to the ring. I saw him one time in the cafeteria, and we had a little talk for about 20 seconds, and I told him I'd go looking for him later. I never did see him, and we did our little interview in the ring. It was pretty real. And
so that was I heard somewhere that it wasn't scripted too.
It wasn't really scripted. There was a sort of an outline of what we could say to each other, and we followed all that. But the sincerity, I think, on his part, I thought was pretty genuine, and I thought that he appreciated it. It was like someone's taken a weight off his back and setting him free. And I've noticed ever since I've been around him that he's in a good mood, and it seems to me that it's quite real, that he's quite appreciative of that step, and that tells me that it was a good thing. I don't have to feel bad like I went back and swallowed my pride and he's still a jerk off, but he's not really so bad, and that's the most you could wish for it. I mean, the truth is, I think that we both were responsible for a lot of that. We were like two guys pulling each other's tails, plus Vince, I think, kind of stirring up Shawn at one time was a very close friend of mine, and I'm not opposed to being his friend. If he wants to be friends with me, or like I miss a lot of the guys like Steve Austin and Undertaker and different wrestlers, were close friends at one time. And someday when they get through their careers in the wrestling, maybe you can pick up your friendships. If that happened with Shawn, that would be all right.
Was he good to work with?
Shawn?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was always good to work with. He was always a professional, except for that last night.
Yeah, fair enough. Hulk Hogan.
Hulk. I don't know. I used to be a big fan of Hulk's. I'm not too big a fan anymore. He just kind of, I know he stopped. He said this about me one time, which I found really offensive. But in fact, it's true for him. Is that he forgot about being one of the boys. Like he used to be just one of the wrestlers, and he was our hero in the dressing room too. He sold out and kind of got wrestling off the ground in such a way that we're all really as mesmerized by him as the fans were. We thought he was the greatest thing that ever. He fed our families. He got wrestling into this whole bigger realm. But in the end, he turned out to be. When I think of Hulk Hogan and I look back now, he was a guy that was spoiled rotten, and deservedly so in those days. But I mean, he talks about his life on the road and wrestling in his book and stuff. Hulk Hogan had the easiest schedule in the world. He flew in on a Learjet. He landed. He could show up anytime he wanted. All the things that they criticized me for, he did every night. He worked about 3 times a week, twice a week, and that was only when he wanted to.